Hello, hello, hello. Waiting for the YouTube to load, waiting for the YouTube to load. So happy to be back with all of you. And let's see if I can actually kill the sound quickly this time. I did it. I killed the sound quickly without doing what I did last time, which was somehow advance to the new video, which was crazy. And because for some unknown reason, chat has not been loading until I chat, I am going to say, hi, everyone. Okay, so you know the routine. Drop a note in the chat when you're here because of that weird, like glitchy thing with chat lately, which I'm not. Oh, yay. Okay, y'all are coming in. Hello, hello from Montreal. Hello. Oh, I forgot to turn off my heater and now I'm hot. This is that really professional start that you all are used to now. Aren't I a pro? I'm such a pro at this. I've been doing this live for a year now. Yeah, Quarantine Live 34. So we have celebrated now, we've hit our 1-year anniversary of our Quarantine Lives. Remember in Quarantine Live 1, when I said, you know, that I came up in quarantine, I left the city and I'm going to be up here for like 3 weeks. So why don't we just turn on the mic and chat with each other? That was a year ago. Anyway, okay, I got reminded that I never do that professional thing. So I'll say it again because I never do it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you get notifications of our next live, and hit the thumbs up if you like it, which, you know, hopefully you will. Hello from North Carolina, from Australia, from Pittsburgh, from Oklahoma. All right, everyone's starting to come in. From Canada, hello. Oh, we have 2 already from Canada. It always makes me wonder, not unlike when I had a certain Ms. Kate Atherley, and the Canadian attendance really shot up, or when I had Ms. Jeanette Sloan and the UK attendance really shot up. I'm wondering if we have a larger Canadian contingency in the house because of a certain special guest. I don't know, we'll find out in a second. I have lots to update you all in the coming weeks. I will say this, I don't usually, you know, like hawk my newsletter or anything, but there is going to be something that's strictly for the newsletter group. So if you haven't already subscribed, I would hop over to subscribe to pattylyons.com. The newest video sweater class will be going on sale at the end of this month. It's going to be Gramercy Park with a whopping 4 yarn options. Here's some of them. So it's going to be like a little mini class almost in yarn substitution, yarn properties, all that stuff. And what I've done in the past is put the video sweater class heavily discounted, almost the price of a regular pattern, all during its launch period, which is when I do a knit along. That's getting really hard to afford. Particularly since in the coming weeks, you're going to learn all about the new education platform that I'm launching, which I'm excited about, but, you know, is hardly free and has taken quite a lot to set up. And it's going to be very interactive with discussion boards and groups and, you know, a lot of the ability for feedback and all that good stuff. So what that means is instead of putting the new video sweater class on deep, deep discount all during the knit along, it's going to be on deep discount for the newsletter group. So you, my loyal fans, will get a coupon code. So that's why I want to make sure that you all don't miss it, because otherwise you'll be bummed. Michigan, Atlanta, Texas. Oh, so many folks in the house. Oh, Toronto. Well, speaking of Toronto, some of you Canadian folks might be like, okay, Patty, I'm not here to see you, so let's go. Some of you might be here to see just the most adorable woman in North America. I was not just America, Canada, and a profoundly talented designer and just the most wonderful human. So without any further ado, everyone, please welcome the amazing Fiona Ellis. And the crowd goes wild.
Hey, Patty.
Hello. Oh my God, it's so nice to see you. So from time to time, you guys, I always look over here because that's where my comments are. I'm going to apologize in advance if I forget that you're here because I'm so excited to see you.
Likewise, Patty. It's been so long, right?
I know. Can I just tell you one thing that I was thinking about just today that you might not even have remembered or thought about. Sometimes somebody does something and it's not a big deal to them, but it happens to come at a difficult time. So it's a big deal for someone else. Like I remember recently I made a comment on someone's Facebook page about how, oh, I'll never forget you. You helped me move my boxes into my sublet after my divorce when I was so sick. And he's like, oh, I don't even remember doing that. And I'm like, really? Because I do. I'll never forget it. I was really low one day, probably at my lowest in the whole pandemic. And out of the blue, you texted me and said, hi, I'm just thinking of you. How are you doing? Do you remember that?
No, I don't. But I do try to do it periodically with people. When somebody pops into your mind, I try and just send a little one line to say, hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing?
It was really weird because I texted back like, actually not so good. And you were like, oh, I'm so sorry. I must have known that. And I was like, yeah, I'm really low. So yeah, it was one of those weird things where you just reached out when I was probably at my lowest.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I had that. Maybe you were sending me some vibes somewhere, through the universe or whatever. But I mean, this is why it's so important to always be kind, right? Because we never know what's going on in someone else's life. And throughout this whole thing, when I've been feeling okay, I've tried to then check in on everyone. And so that, we're all in it together. So, hopefully when I wasn't having a good day, somebody would message me. I wasn't doing it for that reason, but, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
That we all,
and particularly like with social media, everyone looks happy all the time. So during this last year, a couple of times I've posted about I'm not doing so good and it's okay to not be okay. And, all that jazz, but you're getting so many hellos. You're getting hello from Denmark and hi from Dublin. And Nina says, so exciting. I'm knitting one of Fiona's patterns. Oh, Nina.
Which one?
Yeah. That's exactly what, yeah, I was like, oh, type in which one. That's what we always want to know. Like which pattern? Yeah, exactly. Hello from rainy Sacramento, from Northern California, and a lot of Toronto's in the house.
We have this sort of secret message thing, right? That, us Canadians, we we all stick to it because we're just, big country, but we're like a small village, really. So
I know that's the same thing with Brooklyn. Like people think it's such a big town, but we're lots of little. Actually, Toronto really, the very first time I ever went to Toronto, it really reminded me of Chicago, which is where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
Because not only because of the lake and the lakefront and like the whole vibe around the lake in the summer, which was very similar to Chicago. There were like music festivals and everything, but that all the little neighborhoods.
It really is. It has those, like I call it in olden times, like in olden times when you would go out to eat, you'd be like, what kind of food do I feel like? And then you would go to that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I want Italian food. So you go to the Italian neighborhood.
We call that before times, by the way.
Before times, yeah. I call it olden times. You know how everybody always says things were so great in olden times?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, particularly for women. So great.
Yeah.
So great back in the day. Yeah. Speaking of, oh wait, I want to see if there's an update. I'm knitting, proscenium. Wait, I don't know.
Yes.
Is that right? Did I say that right? Because I have my readers on, but it's really, my screen's really far away.
I think I don't know whether I've ever heard it spoken, but it's you should know this, is the theatrical curtain.
Proscenium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there you go. That's how you say it. But maybe
you never heard it spoken.
I think maybe that's an American pronunciation.
Really?
I don't know. No, maybe it is, but
how do you say it?
I've always said proscenium, but
Oh no, that's straight up wrong.
okay. All
Sorry.
right.
It just remember, I come from theater, so
Yeah.
that would be.
How do you? Oh, look at that.
That would be a proscenium.
Clever. So yeah. So I mean, but how do you say aluminium?
Oh, but just don't start with me. I mean, come on. What? Here's the thing. I don't understand why y'all randomly add syllables to some words and then take them away from others.
You guys do the same thing. Herbs. There's a H there. Okay, arm wrestle, Patty.
Okay, I got to tell you one thing about Herb. Back in the day, I used to work for a yarn company, and they were doing a shoot with Martha Stewart. And Martha Stewart's advanced team comes in and tells you all the do's and don'ts, which is not an insignificant list.
I see.
But one of them is never say herb. Martha pronounces it herb.
Channeling her inner Brit, is she?
I don't know, whatever. So no, we say aluminum, and we do use articles like I'm going on a vacation or a holiday. We don't just randomly say I'm going on holiday. We don't just randomly drop the or the
Right.
I mean, I'm going to the hospital. Not I'm going to hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, what do y'all have against the?
Well, you know, if you're going to the hospital, then you know that time is of the essence. Maybe you don't need the in there.
But then, of course, I'm a New Yorker, and we say get online, not in line, which people think is insane.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've been doing during this whole year is I'm brushing up my French on Duolingo, and so there's this whole thing. Is it the bits the little bits trip me up all the time, and I'm like, really? Oh, I thought I'd got that, and then no, apparently not.
See, the gender thing would drive me nuts.
Yes, and you have to remember those. There's not usually that much of a cue. There's some of them are, but is it
like what's a table? Does a table have a gender?
La table. I know that one.
Wait, the table's a lady?
Yes, but chocolate is not. What's up?
Okay, that's not right.
No. Actually, no, you even think gâteau, cake is not, which I know.
Now, if you put all such a stupid conversation, but I wonder if there's ever been a study of the inherent sexism of the gendering of nouns, like our sort of boring or negative nouns, female, and like wonderful things like boats and chocolate. Oh no, a boat's a lady, isn't it? Is a boat a lady?
I don't know. They usually, in English, we always refer to them as she, don't we? Yeah, but
this is insane. Okay.
Somebody who speaks French, please weigh in and tell us.
Oh yeah, if someone speaks French, come on in here. But I was going to tell you, speaking of before times, I was cleaning up my computer and going through some photos.
Oh, when we
remember these?
Yes, I do.
So what we did was we were both teaching at the Webb's retreat, and we had both designed Dolores kits. So we were going to do like a photo shoot with Dolores, and then we pretended that Dolores was angry with us. And we had to do that.
That was so much fun. And we didn't like rehearse that. We just like, faces are we going to do?
I was looking for this photo that I couldn't find anywhere. Because I take so many photos on my phone, and then I'll like post them to Instagram and then I'll delete them. But it was years ago. We were neighbors at Vogue Knitting Live. I want to say it was maybe New York, but our classrooms were next door.
Right.
And I came in when you weren't there, because I was going to leave a note for you on your flip chart, but I was like rifling through your sweaters. And then you walked in and caught me, and I tried to fake like I was stealing your sweaters, and one of the students was like, "Oh, let me take a picture of that." And she took a picture of like me trying to steal one of your sweaters.
you made a habit of that, because you once very kindly helped me pack up, because you were teaching in the classroom right after me. Then I was late, as always, because I am blah 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 blah. You know, you were helping me pack up, and then I realized that you were like, oh yeah, one for me, one for you, one for me.
Well, they're kind of pretty.
Oh, thank you.
And a lot of them are like super my style, because you and I, like, you have that similar vibe that I do, which is I just design clothes I want to wear.
Me too.
I mean, and then I'm like, oh, I'm knitting this thing because I want to have it. Oh, I'll write up a pattern. It's you know, like the newest cardigan that's coming out is, honest to God, because I want a particular type of cardigan that I can't find in stores. I want the pockets a certain depth. I want it big enough that I could actually wear it over another sweater, like an outside coat. So the cuffs need to be big. And so that's why I'm designing it. You know, so many of your sweaters are not, I mean, not stockinette Ann. This is stockinette Ann. This is stockinette and a little something. They obviously have, you know, gorgeous cables, but they're not something where you look at it and go, oh, that looks really interesting to knit for the fun of it. I would never wear it.
Right, right. Well, because I come from a fashion background, and I think that if we, okay, I want to wear this, maybe somebody else feels the same way, right? So yeah, there's those things that we want to try from a technique. Is this possible? Can I do that? But it still has to be something that you're going to want to wear, and is going to be flattering and on, you know, as many body types as possible. Yeah, I mean, I design for me. I sometimes also have somebody particular in mind, you know, that it's not
Really?
my body type, but and then I remember being at a booth one time, and somebody was carrying my pattern, and the woman that I had imagined, some, you know, inanimate woman that I didn't know, walked in and bought it, and I'm like, oh yes, that's exactly who I was designing this for, that body type. Yeah.
See, they talk that. See, you're more. I always think I'm such like a faker and a dilettante, but on Project Runway, they always talk about that. Like, who's your client?
Right.
You know,
right.
and the designers will get up and they'll describe like, well, my client is an on the go, and you know, they describe like their person.
Yeah. But we all know people who are, you know, my friend so and so, and that's what they would wear. You can extrapolate it, right? That if, you know, we all fit into sort of categories, and so, you know, sometimes I design them, and a lot of mine even have girls' names, so, you know, they are people I know, and I've designed it for them, right?
I hate naming things more than I cannot stand it. I ended up naming that one just after the retreat. I'm like, oh, David and I were working so hard trying to find a name. He was helping me with synonyms and stuff, because I said, okay, find me a word that, you know, because it's a whole family of sweaters, because it can be a cardigan or a pullover. It's unisex. There's a kid's version, you know, so and for Volition, I liked that name because it was the thing where you worked it from the top and you can like change your mind as you go. So he came up with all these synonyms, and then you have to go onto Ravelry and search, did someone else already use that? And so finally that was like, affinity. But in the spring, I was knitting the spring video sweater class, and it was wintertime and we were on vacation. Remember vacations? So long ago.
Was that a vacation or just vacation?
I was on, oh God, I hate you. So I was in Palm Canyon, which is when I was knitting it. And I was like, oh, it's going to be called Palm Canyon. I'm done. By the way, Chris Lopez says, when I got married, we had a bilingual service. The officiant used the wrong gender and my husband wouldn't respond. The best man had to whisper, just say I do to him.
Oh, that's great.
Oh my God, hilarious.
I
Yeah.
also name sweaters after places that I was, knitting them. If I was, remember traveling?
Yes.
When we used to travel, I'd be somewhere and I'd be working on it. And so, knitting. I have a really good story about checking names on Ravelry, though, to see if it's already been used.
Yeah.
So I was coming up with one for Twist Collective, and they had they would only usually have like one word names. So, it doesn't get these really long, it's just one word. So I was coming up with various names, girls. I was still in my girls' name phase. And every time I checked, Kim Hargreaves had a pattern by that name. And everyone, I was like, my goodness, Kim Hargreaves has got one. So in the end, I said to Rob, my husband, I'm like, oh, Kim Hargreaves has got all the ones that I want. And he said, well, why don't you just call it Kim Hargreaves then?
Oh my God, Rob. Oh, has anything ever been named after Rob?
Oh no, because you know how lovely he is. He doesn't like wool. He thinks it's prickly.
Okay, Rob. He's a wonderful man.
But he is. But no one's absolutely 100% perfect, it seems.
That's bad though.
Yeah. So 98% is pretty good, right? Yeah.
I used to go through like New York names, like Gramercy Park. Oh, this is Seagate. That's a New York name. I have I've had Prospect Park Capelet in the past. What else have I had? I'm trying to remember. I was really annoyed that after like 2 years after I designed something, a certain big box yarn company that I used to work for designed the same type of garment and named it the same thing. So I can't remember whether it was a cowl or a hat or a cardigan, and I can't remember what it was, but I Googled it. And of course, they're being very powerful. They're now the first hit. And I'm like, you didn't really have to do that.
Yeah.
You could have checked.
Yeah, they could.
That annoyed me.
Yeah. I go with places from around my hometown because that is a little different, right? You're going with Brooklyn, and so this one's Middlebeck, which is right where my mother lives. So yes, nice. The Beck meaning a little streamy thing. Yeah, Middlebeck.
Now, speaking of designing,
we
were talking before we went live about sleeves.
Yeah.
And you had where are you teaching that next?
I'm teaching online at River City Yarns. They're a yarn store in Edmonton, Alberta.
And is it sold out already, or can people book?
The first one was hugely popular, and so they've asked me to do like an extended one. So we're getting deeper in, and it's a longer class. So excellent to begin with, and now I'm going to do a longer class.
And is the link to it on your website?
No, but I can tell you. Yeah, we go
So
by.
text that to me.
Yes.
After we go live, and I'll add that to the show notes. I add all the links right underneath, so that people can book. But you had some sleeve pictures. We want to talk about some sleeves.
I want me to share my screen.
I'm going to see if I can do this thing. Hold on. Let's see if I can make us both.
I'm going to go first.
Going to pin us both. Okay. So let's see if this works with the two of us staying together. I'm not sure if it does or not, but okay. I'm trying to remember what sleeve I just saw. Oh, I know what it was. It's at MoMA, and we couldn't get tickets. Was it MoMA? It's one of the New York museums, and it's one of their, I think it is MoMA or the Met, and it might be the Met. Oh, this is boring. Anyway, it's a fashion exhibit, and it's about current references. Current fashion and what the references are. So it's all these amazing, like side by side dresses from like, now in the 20s or now in the
the 80s. Yes.
But not the 1980s. They were showing like pigeon bodice and the big,
Yeah. It's one of the things I'm so fascinated by. And it was something that, part of my degree was to actually look at the history of fashion and look at those trends and why they come into being and why they become, why do they catch on? Why does a trend catch on?
See, I forgot you like actually are trained for this as opposed to like, I'm a Broadway stage manager. No, I'm a knitting teacher.
I love this. We all come from different backgrounds and we all bring something different to La Table. So
you mean the lady table?
The lady table, yes. And this is when I find out that I've got that completely wrong and I look like a complete idiot. So
I think lady table sounds right, though.
yeah. Yeah.
I just think that inherently sounds right.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
So
do you have a favorite sleeve type? Well, we're about to see.
There's so many really cool ones. And so shall I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah.
Because I love to see, like actual pictures of things so that, they're more, I don't know, I'm a visual person, so I like to. So the first seminar was called Trick Up My Sleeve, and these are all pictures of my designs. But the next one is called Further Tricks Up My Sleeve. Because, so history of fashion, right? Dior's New Look, that one in the middle there, middle top, absolutely fascinating, right? Post-war 1947, and it was completely at odds with what everybody had been wearing before. And women were starved for this super feminine look. So that was all padded under the hips and those big full skirts. Rationing of fabrics meant you had to have a knee-length skirt and it'd be straight. And now you've got these voluminous petticoats and what have you. And a couple of years ago, they had an exhibition of Dior stuff at the V&A.
That was at the Brooklyn Museum too. That was a great one.
I got to see that actual dress or outfit ensemble. And, I was like kind of fainting. It's a bit like seeing your hero, right? Oh my goodness, I've seen this image for so long, and now I actually get to see the actual mannequin. It's fabulous. But everything comes and goes, and we have kind of a shifting fascination from different parts of the body, right? So sometimes it's the hips, sometimes it's the waist, mostly the legs. Hemlines go up and down really a lot, but sleeves are really huge right now. So look at this for a fabulous sleeve, a historical sleeve. But wow, these were from the runways last year. And let's take a quick close at that little baby, that peachy one there. Look at that. It's quilted, and it has this I don't even really know how to categorize that. It's kind of like a drop shoulder, but a puff sleeve. It's very unusual.
Almost like a floating tube around her arm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't quite understand the construction of it.
I think it's dropped in that it's not quite a full drop, but it's certainly not set in, but it's definitely shaped under the armpit, I think. There definitely, and I think, really, I'm not convinced now, but I just think obviously couture things are very, they're always larger than life. But this was what really made me think about it. Golden Globes last year, and look at these magnificent sleeves. They're just they're crazy beautiful, right? Really amazing, and these beautiful colors as well. I've been pondering why even 2021 sleeves are still showing on the runways as really huge. When I first started researching this seminar, I came across this great article. It was written in February of 2020, and the journalist was writing about these large sleeves and how, it's rather odd because you can't get close to somebody to give them a hug wearing sleeves, and and there we go, right? So social distancing. Really? So I wonder if there's something about that. I actually think it's more about women's power, that we take up more space when we have big sleeves, and it's you're not overlooking me. I'm here.
Like in the 1980s.
Exactly.
The power suit.
Yeah.
And then not only did you have the puffy in sweaters, and my wedding dress for my first husband. Remember Princess Di's? That wedding dress was really popular. Yeah. But then so you had the padded shoulders, power suit, and then you had the big puffy sleeve, puffy shoulder.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the 80s is though that we teamed it with pencil skirts and stiletto shoes, which meant here's the power, and here we're undermining ourselves, right? Because I'm hobbling on these silly little skirts and stupid shoes. And I like to think all of these actresses have got running shoes on under their ball gowns.
Well, or now in pandemic.
Oh, socks. I've got slippers on.
I haven't worn shoes in a year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. But lest anybody think it's just about high fashion and, fancy Golden Globe gowns, here's some knitwear with terrific sleeves. These are obviously runway shots, but look at those. Aren't they fantastic? And that middle one, I don't know if it's just the color, but it makes me think of that one that I had highlighted from the catwalk one shot earlier. But terrific, eh? So this is where I'm going. I'm like, so technique wise, how do we do that? But also it still has to be something people want to wear.
Right. I think the middle and, Nora, who was on 2 weeks ago, she's very in all of a sudden to the large sleeve. She just finds it comfortable. She likes that voluminous feeling. And I do think that comfort is a huge thing right now. People, what working from home for a year has taught a lot of people is how much they appreciate comfort. And that just like cozy, billowy, enveloping you.
Yeah.
It's comfortable.
And also the fact that in knitting, you can't do that padded thing because it'll just go limp and then you've just got all this fabric there. So I thought the orange one with the, I guess like a leg of mutton sleeve with the puff and then the slimline cuff. Yeah. See, that's kind of interesting, right? We're using rib fabric for the cuff. And then what would we go into? Something that will bloom out to get the width. But it's actually got gathers and darted pleats in the sleeve cap. So it's very cool. And I think that ruffle one would be really super fun to knit. Although you're going to have a lot of stitches on the needle, probably. So is it going to be fun to knit as well as fun to wear? We have to.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. We love knitting, don't we? So yes, a ruffle involves, depending on which direction you're going, either an insane amount of stitches and then a lot of decreases, or not a lot of stitches and then an insane amount of increases. But doesn't that just mean we have more stitches to knit?
Exactly. I learned that from Sally Melville. It was her take on when we have to rip out.
Oh, yeah.
So she said, what are we going to do when we finish this project? We're going to look for more knitting. Well, if you're ripping back, what have you just given yourself? More knitting. So,
well, that's what I always say about people who, here I've just been swatching the bejeebies out of all these different yarns for the next class. And I'll say, engage class, like, what do you love to do? And people are like, oh, knit. And I'll say, what's that process that you have to do? I always forget, like when you make a swatch, what do you have to do to make it?
Good.
You mean knit it? I'm like, yeah, get over it.
Okay. That's very good. I think I might steal that one, Patty. I will always
away.
I said where I learned the the thing about more knitting from Sally. I will always reference you. I have a thing about how cables like compress the fabric. Cookie A called it cable suckage. And
suckage.
I've totally stolen it from her, but I always say it was Cookie A that I heard it from. So yeah.
I've always said suckage factor, and I didn't know that was a Cookie A thing.
It's where I first heard it. She wanted to use it in her book. She was being published by Interweave and they wouldn't let her use it. So we decided we would spread it throughout the knitting universe and then it will become a universal term.
Well, now because I talk about the suckage factor in one of my classes. Now I will say from Cookie A.
Yeah.
I used to give Chris Billsma the credit for, she was talking about it within the context of picking up stitches, but I use it for helping people understand, especially new knitters, how to count your stitches, how to identify what that stitch is and poke at it. And she would say, put the olive in the martini, put the olive in the martini. So she would take that little V and then she would draw a stem on it.
Right. And it's
right. Put the olive in the martini. And I said, like, as far as both picking up stitches and counting stitches, you don't want to go into that A space, right? So I said, never mix, never worry.
That's very good. That's very good. I like that. What else did I have? I pulled a bunch of, there's so many different types of sleeves, right? All of these interesting names and where do they come from? So this was part of what I covered in the in the seminar, looking at all these different things and where do they come from, when were they fashionable, what eras were they fashionable in, and why did they go out of style? You know,
I have to zoom this bigger for me because one of them I can't read.
which one?
The one with the M. I can barely read that.
Manche is like a sleeve, like a bit like a shrug that medieval ladies used to wear them. So to like just keep themselves a little bit warmer, they would put them over there. They were what do you call those? Sleeves that you can take off on and off. You know.
What's a cold sleeve?
A cold shoulder. It did a weird thing with my words. So yeah, cold shoulders. Weren't they? I loved those because they were called cold shoulders.
You mean the cutout?
Yeah.
So you know why that's going to be big again? Do you know?
Ooh, menopause?
No. Dolly Parton. So Dolly Parton was filmed getting her vaccine, right? And you know, Dolly Parton donated $1 million to the vaccine effort, right?
Yeah.
So she made this adorable video where she's saying, you know, vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm not going to sing it, but you know, well, Dolly's as we say, a woman of a certain age. So she was not going to show up in bare sleeves. So I'm sure she said, where's the shot?
Right.
And so she came with a beautiful long sleeve with
a cutout.
The cutout. And it was going all over Instagram of like, oh my God, this is going to bring back the cold shoulder. And then people started sharing that old picture of Hillary from inauguration night that had the cutouts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah. We'll still call them that. It's only just, I mean, I've still got one sitting in my drawer. I just don't wear it, but I did like it. So I wear it under things so you don't know it's a cold shoulder because it's, you know, the trends moved on. But these things, they catch on, right? And if it's somebody who we admire or we, you know, for whatever reason, then we tend to follow them and we will say, oh yeah, you know, so, you know, whenever I'm doing tricep kickbacks, I'm like, I want Mrs. Obama's arms. I want Michelle Obama's arms every time I'm doing it because, you know, I admire her arms. So yeah, it was really fun doing that. And then I got into, you know, like how we can play with where the speed and or lack of speed that doing increases. And these are the same number of stitches, same number of rows, but if you change the rate of increase, it changes the shape of the sleeve.
Very cool.
So I'm going to get more into that in the second go around. This is one, so Kate Atherley and I are really good friends and we tend to, you know, get together. We used to get together over a beer and we were talking about raglan sleeves and how, you know, they're comfy. And I like the fact that it has this arrow shape that forces the eye to look towards the face, but you get that pooch of fabric under the armpit. So, you know, how do we get a better fitting raglan? So that's something else that I'm going to look at.
Compound. Compound raglan. Yeah, compound raglan is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So this one, going back to the name thing, this one's called Scarrington, which is a little village near from where Rob grew up. And it has this really cool tourist attraction as it is now. So outside the old blacksmith, he used to just throw all the horseshoes when they were done. And eventually they just got piled and piled and piled and piled. And it's massive. I forget how high it is, but it's huge. The blacksmith isn't there anymore. But it's called the horseshoe pile. So notice that I have these horseshoe cables and they're stacked one on top of each other, but they get smaller in towards the neck. And the shaping takes place within those cables.
Nice. So it's
called after Scarrington horseshoe pile. Yeah, so we use what we come across, right? And I've got a couple of gallery slides, right? Pictures of some of my designs that feature cool sleeves.
Very cool. What's the one in the upper left-hand corner? What was that one called?
That greeny one, that one's Wenceslas.
Oh, I like that one.
Where in Prague. I always have to check the spelling of that. whenever I'm typing it. It also has a really cool thing on the back. It has a really cool cabled yoke. And you remember we've had that conversation about
backs.
Yeah.
That's your jam.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm on a sleeve kit right now, but still the backs. Yes, yeah. They're very important.
Look good coming and going. I would never dream of having a blank back after having a discussion with you.
Jolly good. Because you want to make a good impression when you're leaving as well as arriving, right? Yeah. More sleeves. At this point, I've got so many designs, right? And there's the reference to the workshop. So I've done a bunch of things that Kim McBride from Indigo Dragonfly has nicknamed my Lego sweaters. So, because you know how I love things that are asymmetric.
Yeah.
She was saying that I do this thing with this red cardigan, and I've done it in a bunch of different patterns. So you don't have to make the sleeves odd. I've given you instructions for both sleeves, so you could make them the same as each other. You could make the fronts the same as each other. So it's like building blocks there. She calls them my Lego sweaters. So yeah, so that's the reference there for River City Yarns. But I will send you the link so that people can.
Yeah, I'll put that in the. Of course, your design with two different sleeves makes it. I had this whole conversation on Twitter, and because if the pattern says sleeves, that's the heading.
Yeah.
Right. Back, front, sleeves.
Yeah.
It's plural. So I had gotten a message that many of us have gotten in our lives. How many do I make?
Yeah. And
my response was, one for every arm that you have.
Exactly.
I'm not judging. So it was a whole conversation about like, well, I mean, but what if the sleeves are different? I'm like, if the sleeves are different, the pattern would say right sleeve, left sleeve.
Yeah.
Just like if it's a cardigan, it says right front, left front.
Yeah.
Well, but how would you know that? Because the pattern says sleeves. Do I really have to? So then if the pattern says back, singular.
Yeah.
Do I have to put in parentheses, make one?
But we've never done that. We did used to say sleeves make two.
I know, but that was my point. That was the whole conversation, is that some knitters were saying, yeah, you should say, just for clarity, make two. And I'm like, I don't say back, make one. I don't know. It annoyed me.
But then, you do get people who catch on very quickly in a super small left sleeve, right sleeve, because I do non-identical sleeves. I did one with cables, and they were entirely different cables on each sleeve, which meant because of sockage, I had to have different stitch counts.
Oh my God. I know several tech editors who would have yelled at you, who would have said, don't do that. You're going to drive knitters crazy.
Right. But everybody figured it out really quickly, right? Because the rate of increase for the sleeve shape was the same, because the row gauge doesn't change.
Right.
The stitch gauge changes. And, and I sort of, show it in one of my cable classes, and I say, which one's going to have the most stitches? So it's not the big cable, because that's got fewer crosses across the row. It's the small cable that we cross more often across the row. And everyone figures it out. So, it's... and then, of course, then you have to be specific about, make sure you put the right one. I mean, I've done that. Left sleeve, and you put it in the right armhole,
Well, but if the caps are the same, or do you do
No, I usually, because knitwear is forgiving like that.
Right. So if the caps are the same, they could put it wherever they want, actually.
They could, but that particular design, it's all very much like with a cable set off on one side.
Oh, got it.
Also a tech thing, right? That I wanted the cables to match on the shoulder.
Right.
Set up for the back and the front are reversed, so that you get the cable on the left side of the body.
Oh my God. I thought I was bad with this thing, because I was obsessed with the cable growing out of the...
Yeah, and they mirror image, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is a split, a basic split, because it can be a cardigan or a pullover. See, this is the pullover version. But what I was obsessed with was the cable for every single size growing seamlessly out of the rib.
Yeah.
So what that meant, because the neck shaping for both the cardigan and the pullover is built into the cable.
Yeah.
What varies the length is what row of the cable you start on.
Right.
So what that meant is that was so hard to figure out, because you don't want 12 different transition charts, because that'll be really make a pattern hard to read. So plus not every row of the cable can transition.
Yeah.
Mathematically, it had to be for the back one that could beautifully in two transition rows, change stitch count by 6.
Right.
The front has to change stitch count by 6 or 2. But anyway, I had to look through every row that could work.
Yeah.
Then look to find what sizes I could group lengthwise. Yes. So that there weren't like 12 transition charts. There were, 4 transition charts, but it was.
Yeah. I know, but they kind of drive you crazy. But then when you've got it down and it's all been checked and it's good, then the knitter's not going to have those problems. They can just follow the instructions, and we've done the headache.
But it's maddening to design, and it's so funny, because have you ever been doing something where, because I know how you feel about transitioning from the rib, where like one size won't play nicely.
Right.
Like everything works, but then the medium's like, no.
Yeah, there's always one, right, that doesn't quite work, and then
and nobody notices. Like, no, it's this detail that pleases you, but does anyone notice? I don't know.
I think when people are actually knitting it, they will see it, because you're up close and personal on that actual transition row. So hopefully, but when you're wearing it, but it does drive me mad on store-bought things right? And I'm like, I always think, well, that's what I call about what we're doing when we're hand knitting. It's a couture technique, because we're making it by hand. We're in control of every single stitch. We're not just throwing it together in some factory somewhere. And, which is why I have that whole thing about necklines too, that the neckline treatment, it can be a 1x1 rib and neatening, but it doesn't have to be. It can elevate and be so much prettier and so much nicer.
Oh yeah, I love where you have, that's your thing too. I love when your cables grow into some kind of neck thing.
And that always means you have to have the right row that you finish on here.
Yes.
And the back neck is different from the front neck. Oh, yeah. So then you have to decide what happens, right?
See, a friend of mine always who thinks I'm crazy for the amount of time I spend on the details. She's like, that's what 1x1 rib is for. Just do 1x1 rib and go into whatever. And I'm like,
that's a manufacturing process, right? And I think what we're doing, and I always just believe that if you really believe in what you do and you want to do a really good job, then isn't it worth just putting a bit more effort in?
Yeah.
Even if nobody really notices it, yourself that you've done the best that you possibly can.
I just get far fewer designs done every year.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you're up against the gun and you're like, oh, I need to finish this, or I'm checking something, and the tech editors bounced it back and went, no, that doesn't work. You're like, oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, why do I do this to myself? But
have you ever kind of done some little detail and you end up a little bit designing yourself into a corner, and then you it's like sticking your finger in a dike and then another thing springs forth. Yeah. Then you fix this thing and you don't realize then, oh my God, but that thing that I had totally thought through 2 weeks ago now doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. This is why we rely so much on our tech editors, and why having a professional tech editor is, amazing. Any kind of editor makes you look good if they do their job well. So, I use Kate Atherley, Sandy Rosner, she's amazing. She used to send things back when we worked for Twist, she'd be like, no, you can do better than that, and I loved it. At the time, I'm like, oh, cursing her, but,
Do you know, have you ever worked with Charlotte Quickle? Wait, is that the right? Oh, shoot.
How you
Did I say
say
her
it?
name right?
I think so. Yeah. Yes, I have on a couple of.
She, um, she's very particular. And like, I remember I had her for creative knitting, and I ran into Kara Gott Warner, who was the editor in chief at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, can I talk to you about the tech editor?" And she's like, I know. She's really rough. She's really detailed. A lot of people don't." And I'm like, "No, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, oh my God, I love her so much. I want to kiss her on the mouth," because she didn't dumb things down
Right.
and remove the detail. But what she did do is say, "I see what you're doing there. And I
Yeah.
understand that's how you knit it." I remember it was for a reverse shirt tail hem in the front. But she said, "I promise you the end result looks the same. But do you see if you did this, 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 and then did the join, how it's easier for the knitter?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that is easier."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we learn, right? That is a really good editor, makes you look good and educates you along the way. And then you take that forward and, this is how we become experienced,
And
experience
you know,
making mistakes.
one of the best tips I learned early on from a tech editor, one of my very first tech edit, and I think it was from Knit Style, Elizabeth Shaw. And when I said about the transition rows, I looked to see what sizes had what in common. She sent back a pattern and she said, "I respect the fact that you're honoring the absolute to the millimeter truth of every size. But this pattern now is harder to read than it needs to be. So what I suggest is, like with the shoulder shaping, just look at the stitch counts and see which sizes have enough in common that you can." So now I do that always. Like, say I'm doing sleeve shaping and I start with pure math.
Yeah.
And there's my spreadsheet. And pure math has this size doing every fourth row and every sixth row. And this size has every fourth row and sixth row. And this one is every sixth and eight. And then it's 8 and 10. And this. And if I only have one size that's doing something every 10 and 12, I'll be like, "No, that's every 10." And then they have more rows straight, and that's fine. But that was a tip I learned from her, that more words means it's harder to read and it looks intimidating and people will drop.
Yeah, and people get lost, and then they don't get. And what our job is to get people to the end point and have a good time doing it. Right?
Yeah. And that it's really irrelevant whether it's an inch of straight knitting after the shaping, an inch and a half, or 2 inches. It's not irrelevant if it's a half inch. That's probably not going to fit as well. Or if it's 7 inches, that's going to look weird. But like, she was one of the first ones to tell me, like, yeah, it's okay if one size has an inch of straight knitting and the other size has 2.5 inches. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's under here. No one sees.
Right.
Oh, you know what one of my favorite sleeves is doing nothing.
Yes. Like nothing at all. So it looks like it's flared at the bottom, but it's just the straight. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be good.
That's the lazy woman sleeve. I really like sleeves that do utterly nothing.
Yeah, that is very cool.
But I did learn there are patterns that you are trained, but there are patterns that I designed many years ago that I've gone back and, without making a lot of fanfare on Ravelry, just slightly rewrote and then put it back up as an update. And one of the things that I learned is, like, you can't have a straight sleeve for every size, because then some of the larger sizes, the cuff's going to be crazy.
Right.
So some sleeves will have slight shaping and other sizes do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really interesting experience. This is such a long time ago. Melanie Fallick was the editor at Interweave, and she had the most amazing aesthetic, and I loved working with her. But I did this short row striped sweater so that everything tilted.
Yeah.
And we actually, then we said, oh, let's throw in. I sent the submission and she loved it, and then she said, okay, can we do this with it and that with it? And I sort of agreed to it all. Raglan shaping and all of this. And then I think it was a Stitches show, and I bumped into Anne Budd, who was the tech editor at Interweave. And she said, oh, I'm afraid of that, because you've done it in one size, but we're going to have to grade it. And I'm like, I haven't thought of the grading part. It's going to look amazing. And so I was like, trepidation. But what I came up with is that if I had the same number of short rows, I could change the number of stitches held on each short row. And it was really, the instructions were really short. And when Anne saw it, she was like, oh my God, because she was concerned that it was going to take up half the magazine, right? Because, you know, magazines had different parameters. If it's 12 pages long now, okay. But in a magazine, they've only got so many inches of copy that they can put in.
And that's what my big soapbox moment with knitters who want a knitting pattern to be a knitting how-to book, which is not what patterns ever used to be, is that we have gotten the magazines and books we deserve, because we're getting fewer patterns per magazine, because knitters are demanding picking up the needle with your left hand, drape the yarn over, like they're demanding step by step, which is not what a pattern used to be. A pattern used to be how many stitches go away, how many stitches get added, what's the stitch pattern.
If you go far enough back, they basically read like, cast on enough stitches and knit till it's big enough.
Right? Oh my God, I do this whole spiel, which is true in my design classes, where I talk about my grandmother's pattern. And my grandmother's sweater pattern literally said, cast on the appropriate number of stitches in your stitch gauge for 18 to 20 inches wide. Knit the desired number of rows until body length is achieved. Armhole shaping. Bind off 1 inch worth of stitches in your gauge, followed by decreasing away at the rate of every row, every other row, or every 4th row until desired crossback measurement is achieved. Shaping should take place in the lower third of the armhole. Like that was a sweater pattern.
I have old books that have those in, right? They just,
And I said that once, and a student raised their hand and said, you know what? I now know more about the armhole. If a pattern was written like that, like I didn't know the shaping should take place in the lower third. She's like, well, that's really important information for me to know. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. There's sometimes you do lose things, right? By, I don't know, giving too much hand holding. You can lose some of it, and you know, too little information also means people aren't successful, and we don't want that either. So
I think it's like a Seurat painting. I feel like many patterns that have gone into the 29 pages long downloadable PDF, you know, take ball, remove ball band, you know, we're now seeing all the dots and we've lost the big picture. We have to still have the big picture in our head.
I do like it when you get like kind of an overview. This is what you're doing and this is how you do it. So some of us, you know, maybe you're a very experienced knitter and you're like, okay, I know how to do that. They can just read the overview and they're good. Somebody who's much newer or hasn't done this technique before needs much more information. So you know, there's a happy medium there.
You know, the thing you said about grading, that was that I'm really happy that when I first sort of made that transition between and Trisha Malcolm was really the one who like pushed me to make the transition, where I would say like, oh no, I'm not a designer. I just write, like I'll write a pattern for something. And Trisha's like, that's designing. No, I just like, there's a thing I want to knit and I can't find a pattern for it. So like I make a pattern. I'm not. But one of the things early on that I learned is you have to censor yourself as you design, and you have to think through how it's graded. And the first magazines, one of the first magazines that I worked for really, really regularly was Vogue. And Vogue was the only of the 7 magazines that I worked for back in the day that did their own grading. But I still always turned in my pattern with a sheet that said grading notes or grading thoughts. And I'll say like, you know, like if it was a cable thing and it had a lot of different cables, I'd say, you know, for this size to this size, you could start on this row. You could add this number of stitches between the panels. So I had thought it through.
Yeah. I used to do something similar too, that, you know, like, by the way, when you get to this point, just think about this, because as you're working through it, you're like, oh, that could be a point of, there could be a glitch there or something that's going to trip you up. And because when you're knitting it, there's that kind of meditation that gives you time to really think about, well, what's this going to look like in a whole bunch of other different sizes, or so
and it was interesting, I had someone email me, and she said, I was looking through some of your patterns, and I also know you teach, and I just wanted to let you know that when you have a thin center motif, like something that's 4 inches wide or something, that won't look good in all sizes. And I just want you to think about that, and maybe you should teach that. And I said, and I emailed her back and I said, well, did you know you're looking at a photograph of one size, but I'm not sure what pattern you're looking at, whether you're looking at Palm Canyon or Tortola, but in the pattern, that panel is different number of stitches for every size. So I said, I don't want you to look at a pattern that has some thin motif if they're showing the 34-inch chest and assume that it's the same width. You could message the designer and say, could you tell me the width of the center panel in size, whatever.
Right.
She didn't answer me back, but.
It was something that I got into, where putting cables, and you just mentioned that, the number of stitches between vertical, cables particularly, which also leads back into the setup for the rib, that I change it for different sizes, because you don't want it all smushed together. Like if you're a larger person, you've got everything in here and then a swath of reverse stockinette.
Right.
So it looks proportional to the frame. And, but then that means that you've got more stitches between, so your rib setup gets...
God, I know.
But, I think it's kind of, this part of the game, right?
It's hard, although it does come back to the conversation we had before we went live, which is, and this is why a sweater pattern should not be $7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours.
It is. And also, we've just talked about all of those experiences we've had, that we brought all that knowledge to every single pattern. And sure, if I went back to my very early patterns, I would probably go, oh no, I would do this differently now. And, there's lots of things that we learn along the way. So, it's...
and there's a couple that I like that I want to keep alive, that I'm gonna, one in particular that I don't want to say, but where I just think, you know what, back then I was working for magazines all the time, and magazines would always say, we use CYC standards, Craft Yarn Council sizing standards. So like, I'm going to be a good little girl and follow the rules. So I use Craft Yarn Council standards. I don't think they're right for the upper arm.
Right.
I think they're too small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Andy and I had that conversation once. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I learned that, like, you learn that when you read multiple comments of a size that's, the sizes that are 48 and over, saying like, oh, I really like this design, I tweaked the upper arm. And I'm like,
Or we talk to knitters at, and they explain, that, I'm doing all those tricep kickbacks. What's that going to do to my shape of my arm? It's going to...
I said that once, is that I felt like women are more active, and it's not that we're heavier, but I thought that too. I think we are more muscular than way back when those standards were written, and we're more active, and we have more guns. But there's one pattern that I can think of off the top of my head that I like, that I want to keep alive, where I definitely think like 50 and up, or 48 and up, the upper arm's not right.
Yeah. And I think this also, this is one of the things that I'm going to look at in this class, is looking at how do we change, supposing one, it doesn't fit your, I don't know, a larger size or a smaller size, but we can be put together differently.
Yeah.
So, our arm length changes, the width of the upper arm. I have very narrow wrists. And so, I want things, when I make them for myself, I want them to be snug, because I like that I've got thin wrists, but maybe you don't like something about your arm and you want to change that. So how would we take a pattern and plug in the numbers so that you can fix it yourself, so that it will
Yeah,
fit
because there's no way, even, my wrist, by the way, is 5.5 inches. It's crazy. It's a nutty wrist. And also my arms are very, very long. They're not standard arm length.
Yeah, I know.
So even if you have 12 sizes, there is no way that a pattern should be followed as written.
Right.
I mean, and that's what I say in all my classes, that the odds of you matching every single dimension is so minuscule.
Yeah. And sewing patterns will put in these lengthen or shorten here, widen or narrow here.
Right.
They give you a guideline to where to do that. And I think a lot of us have got to that point where we're trying to educate people so that they can look at things and modify them so that couture piece really is couture and will fit them well and make
why hand knit if we're not going to make it exactly for us? By the way, Marcia says big sleeves are good for business. They require more yarn.
I see. Good point, right?
You like that. Now, Julie wants to know that she loves the treble clef on your wall. Do you have a musical background?
I do not, no, but
you love music.
I love music. And I have someone here that wants to say hello. Nice segue, hey? Oh, here he is.
Do you know what I still carry in my wallet? I wish I had my wallet here. For the big exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum, there was another amazing exhibit in the subways.
Oh, yes.
In the subways. And there were one subway station only, one subway station.
Yeah.
The machines gave you one of 5 different Bowie cards, but it was randomized. So the line was crazy at the subway machine. So I would go and, it's like playing the lottery. You're like, big money, big money, big money. Aladdin saying, yes, I got. So I did end up getting 4 out of 5 of them. Oh. And I carry them in my wallet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think I told you this when it opened at the V&A. And it was in March. It was my birthday yesterday, which is my new present. And so we flew to London to go to the V&A exhibition, and then we saw our families while we were there. And everyone thinks that we went to see them and happened to see the Bowie exhibition while we were visiting them, but it was the other way. Oh, I just said this, and now they'll all know, right?
I would never have thought that. In a million years, I never would have thought that. I really thought you and Rob were going to come to Brooklyn when
we were going to, and then because I saw it 3 times, right? Exhibition, but
they added a whole section for Brooklyn.
Yeah, they changed it up in each of the places. My producer at the Craftsy, when I was filming my Craftsy thing, and Evan was also a big Bowie fan, and of course I had that moment where we discovered this, and he's like, oh yeah, my parents introduced me to Bowie. I'm like, great, he's like but we talked Bowie in between all takes, and it was like it's great.
I have the theory that he held the universe together, because after he died, at least in America,
we had that online chat the day that he passed away, and we were both sobbing. But this pillow is brand new, so I'm moving it around my apartment, and I'm auditioning to see which is his best angle. And I just Rob does play guitar, and I happened to put it on the chair next to it, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Ziggy plays guitar. So I think he might be sitting next to the guitar.
Very nice. Now we've got so many comments here about patterns, but I have to scroll back. Oh, I see. Okay. I have to scroll back to find the comment that came before, because I just saw a pattern that said, a comment that said, I learned with those patterns, so I'm sometimes overwhelmed with all the information. But I had to scroll back where she said patterns in German magazines are like that.
Oh, yes.
With lots of information. Oh yeah, and Chris says CYC arm sizes do seem to run small. I think they're fine for the smaller sizes, but I also don't agree with their armhole depth when it gets to the larger size. So both of those together.
Yeah.
And I don't really agree with the crossback.
So
I think the crossback is it's the opposite problem. I think they're, for the larger sizes, they're crazy pants large.
I wonder if what was the date that they set those? Because this could also be about garments that were being worn. We wear things that fit like true to our shoulders these days. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was all a bit iffy around the shoulders, right?
It's old. I mean, I don't think they've been changed for a long time, but I mean, I think that there are crossbacks that are like 18 inches wide, and that for sizes that, are probably more like 16, and for the like 30 and 32, I'm actually, it's a 38 that I'm wearing on this one, just because I talk about this sweater about why, like, I'll be really random which sizes that I knit for myself. Like, it depends on what I'm going to wear under it.
True.
What I think, and I thought like, oh, I'll probably wear a padded bra when I wear this one. Like, I'll be, so I don't know, to 38. So there.
Just so you know, I don't wear padded bras. It's all me.
Well, some of us weren't. Oh, Allie says, happy birthday, Fiona, with lots of little icons of cakes and people and hats.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, Michelle just came late. Don't worry, Michelle. It gets recorded and it goes on, it'll be on forever. The comments, the chat, just so you know, in case you come visit, it takes like an hour or two to populate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So like if you look right away, it won't be there. So the subtitles and the live chat take a while. And oh my God, I can't believe how long we've been chatting.
Oh wow. Yeah, this happens when you're having fun, doesn't it?
I know. Normally I say that after about 45 minutes, but for you, I knew it would.
I told you, I always run late.
I know. Can I tell you one last Bowie thing before I actually go back to work? And now I'm trying to remember if it was Radio Lab. I got to remember what radio show it was, but I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But it was so fascinating. They had the interview that was all about the creation of the soundscape in the exhibit.
Oh, right.
And, it's just, you think like, oh, I'm just listening to Bowie music. But oh my God, the thought. So first of all, Bowie was still alive when the exhibit was being put together.
Did I know my theory about that?
No. Oh, yes.
Real quick. And I'm sorry to anybody who's not a Bowie fan. So yeah, David Jones created all of these characters and he would kill them off. And when he first killed them off, was rock and roll suicide and all of that. And then he puts together an exhibition that feels posthumous, even when he was alive. And I'm like, oh my God, David Jones is killing Bowie. And it turns out not quite to be true, because he did have a last hurrah with Black Star and everything, right?
But I think when the exhibit was being put together, he was already sick.
Yes, he was, definitely.
So, and what was interesting about hearing the producer talk about the soundscape is you would think, with that in mind, like he would be control freaky and but the guy kept saying like, oh, I want to play you what I have so far. He's like, when it's finished, I trust you. Wow. But it was all about, there were technical things like having to slow down one song and speed up the other so that they'd mesh, which I didn't think about. But there were also how he wanted people to experience the music with the exhibit. Yeah. So the exhibit starts chronological, but then it's no longer chronological. It starts to go more thematic. Yeah. So same thing with the music. And I gotta find the podcast and send it to you. It was so interesting.
Did I share with you about the Alexander McQueen jacket?
No.
It suddenly occurred to me while I think it was the second or third time I was seeing the exhibition, that jacket was designed so that it's kind of cut away at the front. So when he's holding a guitar, it doesn't mess with the line of the jacket. I'm like, only a really great designer like McQueen would come up with that, right? And then, of course, then there are jackets after that follow the same, because it looked amazing on him. And that was a cool thing they had in the exhibition. Sorry, his measurements, right?
Oh, I saw that. That was so cool.
He had a waist of like, a teenage girl or something.
Yeah, they had the little book that was open with all the notations. Oh my God, he was tiny.
But big shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, just that exhibit was amazing. The clothes, everything. Yeah, I
shouldn't have started it, should I?
know, sorry. I was already a member of the Brooklyn Museum because that's my local museum. It's just down the street from my house. And I was just over the moon that they got it versus, and I'm still not really sure how, versus the Met or MoMA. You'd think it would go to the Met, but no, it went to Brooklyn.
It came to AGO, which is not a major museum player, right? But
interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, now thinking, I now realize there was a special on the 25th anniversary for Rent, and the artistic director for New York Theater Workshop was saying how Rent saved the theater during the pandemic because of the money that New York Theater Workshop made from being the original producer of Rent. They were able to purchase the building and lower all their expenses. And he said, basically, because of that show, we were able this whole year, when we're not allowed to produce, to not lay off any staff, which is amazing because it's a theater. So there's staff being paid to do nothing. And that, as soon as I heard that, I was like, you know what? That's what the Bowie exhibit did for the Brooklyn Museum, because they got so many members. Because really, if you weren't a member, you could not get a ticket. Right. I mean, there was not getting it, and members, we got to log on whenever we wanted. Like, that was the first thing I asked was, can I go anytime I want? They were like, well, you need a timed entry, but if you're a member, just log on and pick out your timed entry. So I would just go. I went 3 times.
Yeah.
I just went and like I just want to look at this area again. But yeah, that occurred to me.
Yeah. Some of those great exhibitions. One of the things that I've noticed in the last few years, I guess leading up to 2020, that exhibitions became like rock shows, right? That everybody wanted to go to. The McQueen, the Bowie, the Dior.
I can't believe I missed the McQueen.
Oh. That was a cool experience, talking to random strangers while experiencing it, like, look at that sleeve. Do you see how that's cuff is cut? Like that was really cool. Yeah.
The only exhibit that was like that from, at least in America, back in the 70s. And it actually, to this day, holds still one of the records for the busiest Ticketmaster call-in, not a rock show, the King Tut exhibit.
I can believe that, right?
It was.
And that was also a thing that, you go back to fashion history, and it had a major impact on fashion.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, yeah.
Yeah, so these things... See, we all bring it all full circle, people, eventually. So you just thought we were off on one of those fan things there, but we were aiming to sum it all up.
Well, that was the only part of my old life that has anything to do with my new life as far as design.
Yeah,
was when I was in theater school. Because I was a stage manager, we had to know everything about all the different aspects. So we had to take lighting design classes and acting classes and directing classes and costume design classes. So it was the survey class, those survey classes where you cram as many slides in. And it was art, architecture, fashion, and furniture. Just a couple of categories.
Yeah.
Egyptian time to current day.
Oh my goodness. On all of those categories.
It was a year-long class, and it was called art, architecture, fashion, and furniture. And I still remember certain things about like how the church influenced fashion. I remember zippers, that was like
big time, right? Yeah.
Scandalous because you could get people out of their clothes quicker.
Yeah.
So that was a no-no.
Yeah.
And I remember learning about things that I didn't think about, like the invention of children's clothing. And I was like, what do you mean the invention of children's clothing? Well, that children's clothes used to simply be adult clothes.
Made smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't have like their own clothes. It's like stuff like that.
the advent of synthetic dyes came out of William Perkin messing about trying to find an artificial quinine, and came across something that dyed silk mauve. And that's where artificial dyes start from.
What?
Yeah. Because apparently the Empress Eugenia, I think it was, of France, she loved the color. She thought it matched her eyes. So I've always imagined she looked like Elizabeth Taylor. And she started a trend. And then he went off into commercial dyeing rather than research science. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Amazing. Yeah.
There's so many. This is the, that's the kind of random fact that David would know. David knows all those like.
Yeah, I love those kind of things. And one of my favorites, I researched stockings. And so the advent of nylon, came out just before the First World War. And so ladies had got a taste for nylons. Oh. And then, of course, they go away because, it's the war. And there's this great quote from DuPont saying, there'll be stockings by Christmas, like at the end of the war. There'll be stockings by Christmas. And I'm thinking, aren't they ladies more keen that their family members are coming back from the front? They're worried about being able to get stockings by Christmas. But there were fights. There's like stocking wars, ladies fighting over the last pair of stockings, and they're like, punching each other, and cat fights over a pair.
It's like getting toilet paper in America a year ago.
Crazy stuff, right?
I have no idea who started the rumor that we would run out of toilet paper.
Yeah, I know.
Like, how did was that in Canada too?
Mm-hmm. And the UK. It's like,
really?
Yeah.
And then here's the other one that I couldn't figure out. I thought like, oh, this must be Big Bean, is why people were buying beans. People were buying legumes, cans and cans and cans of beans. And to this day, a year later, people are saying on Instagram, like, I still have cans of beans. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
Like, why did pandemic equal toilet paper and beans?
Isn't it because there are guidelines of things to stock your house in case of a disaster? And those things would be listed, candles, I don't know, battery operated radio, in case there was,
I do not know. But I was thinking about how this woman was being interviewed on NPR that is, she's an archivist and she works for the Smithsonian. And I was thinking, this must be so hard, so much harder. Think about if you were an archivist during World War II, right? Thinking ahead to telling your story. Well, there's physical objects you could save. You might put the call out for if there's letters to collect. But there's not millions of hours of video and tweets and the Instagram. How
are they going to
museum archivists do it now?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
Because I was thinking about 9/11, and even, that was 2001, but think about how little, there was television, but it wasn't the Instagram and the Twitter. So like exhibits of 9/11, immediately the archivists were thinking, as the things started to be left around the fence of the church that was open right in front of Trinity, and they started collecting things and saving things and physical life. But I can't even wrap my brain around how 5 years from now the museum exhibits about the pandemic are going to be.
So we now need to find a podcast of people who are archivists to how they're doing it, because they must be.
It must be such an amazing job.
Yeah.
Oh, Allie just said, I watch endless documentaries about sock construction. What? The amount of legumes would result in a dearth of the loo roll being used. Yes, I guess they are connected. Exactly. Oh, Sue says beans are lower cost and sustaining people losing jobs and need more pantry staple items. Yeah, but then they're still in the pantry because people don't know what to do with them. So it's like someone read an article that said, oh, stock up on beans.
Yeah, yeah, because we have an overflow to our pantry that we call the COVID bag,
Really?
That's like now my default. If I use something from there, I go and buy one to put back, and I'm like, that's ridiculous, right? I don't need, to do that, but we thought we might have to. So
see, David was he went a little extreme the other direction. He was like so anti-hoarding. I'm not going to hoard. I'm not going to hoard. And finally, I had to bring up that the signs on the grocery stores in New York where we were said, please. There were some stores that said, please try to come once a month.
Yeah.
Other signs said, please, one per household, which is tricky if you're trying to come once a month and carry enough. But so we were like, okay, we're both going to go in. So we're breaking the please one per household, but we're going to go once a month. So we're going to buy a lot. So I finally had to convince him, like, you're not hoarding if you're thinking ahead to buy a month's worth of something.
And that's kind of what we did. We got like things that we could make meals for 2 weeks without having to shop. So that's there. We actually would do it that Rob would go into the grocery store and then text me that he was in the checkout line. And then I would go over and meet him so we could carry everything back.
Oh, that's smarter. I guess I could have stayed in the car.
City living, right?
Well, mostly we were up here. Oh my God. I'm in so much trouble because I really should go because I have a whole contract I have to get out.
It should be like cut off music like the Oscars.
I know. This is terrible. I'm just catching up on comments. They're good for. Oh, Sue says about the beans, they're good for years, and some people are still locking down and not going out anywhere. No, I know. I think what happened is a lot of people don't cook, and they thought they're going to cook, and then they still just did delivery.
Yeah.
We have committed to, once the restaurants opened again for carry out, takeaway, whatever you call it. It's weird that sometimes I can't remember what it's called. We tried to commit to once a week so that we could get some money back into the restaurants. So we sometimes we forget and we don't, we realize like, oh, we didn't order from anyone, and then we'll do it twice a week. But like, we're trying to make sure to get some money into those restaurants.
Yeah. We're trying to do the same thing. So yeah. And it's kind of fun to get something from your favorite.
And now we're hyper aware of, once I started learning about the really extraordinary cut that like places like Seamless were taking. Now we're really aware of look at the restaurant's website, and do they do ordering from their own website, or can we call them? We're really trying not to do Seamless. Because Seamless made a big deal about how they were going to lower their rates that they were taking from restaurants at the beginning of the pandemic. Turns out not so much true.
Well, business, right?
Thank you. This is truly one of the best Patty lives. Oh, that's just because like I felt bad for all of you, because sometimes I just felt like, oh yeah, no, I should read comments, because really I miss you so much.
I miss you too.
I can't wait to see you again.
We miss, and I'm telling everybody that I will be crushing ribs next time I get to hug.
Oh my God. So, yeah, and you're a hugger.
All those, I am a big hugger, and all those tricep kickbacks, like beware. So
But as long as we can remember that chocolate fondue place you found. Oh my God. Oh my God. I still think about that. That place was amazing.
It was really amazing.
It was right next to that little yarn store. What was that yarn store in Toronto? You were teaching there, and I came to
just moved. Linda's Crafty. She's
she's
north of the city, and she's moved there. So yeah.
Oh, that was a sweet place. That was really cute.
But yeah, she's got more space now, and still doing the same thing, but just a little out of the city and more space. So.
Okay, so my final question, and then we'll sum it up, is what do you think when we're all vaccinated and we get the, like, yes, you can travel, with money being no object, so this is not a real question, like no reality constraints, where would be the first place that you would want to travel to when everyone says like, go, fly, travel, we're all vaccinated?
There's two to that, right? Because my first one would be, I want to go see my mom, because, you know, she's 83 and it's her first year alone, and it was this. So I want to go see her. So obviously, and then, you know, there'd be a little side trip to London, but I would really be going to see family and then whatever's in London, not the other way around. And then I think I want to go to Scandinavia.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that always someplace you wanted to go, or did something during?
No, it was on the list, and it also back to Berlin, because we went a couple of years ago and didn't get enough time there. So yeah.
Well, those are good goals. All right. Yeah, I think we're looking for a time that David can share the driving with me, because to see my mom is a 14.5 hour drive, which is really long, but my mom has now had her second vaccine shot. So she's now receiving visitors. So she wasn't real, like I asked before and she was like, no. she was not receiving visitors, but now that she is fully vaccinated, she's like, as long as you have a negative test, come on down. So yeah, I'm going to try to find a time but we're going to drive. We're still not going to fly.
Right.
14.5 hour drive though. But I guess you can't really like drive to London.
No, it's kind of, it's a little difficult. There's a bit of water in between. So
yeah.
Or something, which could be just as bad as a plane, right?
A little worse, actually.
Yeah.
Because planes have this is the annoying thing. If we could do like and be in the plane and then go and be off the plane, inside the plane is one of the safest places you can be, because like especially with Delta, these flights that have the newer planes that have invested in this incredible filtration system.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
It's the cabs and then getting. So if I could just like beam myself onto a plane and then beam myself from the plane to my final, then we could all travel.
I've been doing that. I would like to be asleep in my bed and wake up in the place I want to be. So there's no, you know, it's like completely beam me up from here to there, you know.
Why haven't we like developed that yet?
I've been working on that one, and the being able to it's just lie on the couch eating cookies and the Hoover goes on. And we've kind of got something akin to that. Yeah.
Get the Roomba.
So that, you know, it's in the works. I'm sure they'll have it soon. That we can just, you know, transport from our bed to somewhere else.
That in the flying car, which by the way, I'm living in New York. I'm really glad no one's ever perfected the flying car, because I think that would be a freaking nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't
jams. Yeah.
No, and there's gonna be like air rage, and there are going to be cars crashing into each other and then dropping from the sky. No one needs that. No one needs that. Okay, so we are going to go, and we have a sign off that we say for all of our. Let me see if I wonder if I could. I'm going to see. Do I have it? No. I was going to see if I had something handy. We have a little sign off that we always say to each other when it's time to leave, and I give a little warning so people can type it in. We always say to each other, wash your hands, don't touch your face, wear your mask, knit on. So I want to see if I can I can't get the mask from here. Okay, anyway. And I'll add, get vaccinated as soon as you can.
Yeah, and don't lick anything.
Oh, was that a thing before?
No.
Were people just randomly licking things?
Being, you know, crazy that, you know, like, just don't lick anything.
So note to self, hold on. Don't. So you're saying don't lick things. Okay. I think on that festive note.
It was so lovely to see you.
It was so lovely to see you. I cannot believe how much I am not working today, but I really must work. Okay.
All right. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.